to Sabbath School with Miss Lana. This is a thing now. Let's start with a song, and then we will pray and get into our lesson. So we're going to sing Be Thou My Vision today. Be Thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me save that Thou art. Thou my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, Thy presence my light. And that's what we need. We need God's presence to be our light and to be our vision and to help us to see where we're going. Let's start with prayer. Dear God, thank you for this Sabbath day that you can bring us virtually together to learn more about you and about what you have done for us. And I ask that you bless this lesson and help it to reach those watching and for everyone to learn a little bit more about you. Amen. All right, we're going to take a pause from our normal Grace Link studies that you get in your little Sabbath School lesson book. For 4 weeks, we're going to take a break and we're going to study Easter and the events surrounding Easter because it's almost Easter time. So if you want to follow along with the study I'm doing, you can go to grapevinestudies.com, and I'm doing the resurrection study for the next 4 weeks. And so let's start. So we're going to start with what happened before Easter, what happened at the beginning. And so Matthew 26, verses 20 to 29, which says, "In the evening, Jesus was sitting at the table with his 12 followers. They were all eating. Then Jesus said, 'I tell you the truth, one of you 12 will turn against me.' This made the followers very sad. Each one said to Jesus, 'Surely, Lord, I am not the one who will turn against you, am I?' Jesus answered, 'The man who has dipped his hand with me into the bowl is the one who will turn against me. The Son of Man will die. The scriptures say this will happen, but how terrible it will be for the person who gives the Son of Man to be killed. It would be better for him if he had never been born.' Then Judas said to Jesus, 'Teacher, surely I am not the one, am I?' Judas is the one who would give Jesus to his enemies. Jesus answered, 'Yes, it is you.' While they were eating, Jesus took some bread. He thanked God for it and broke it. Then he gave it to his followers and said, 'Take this bread and eat it. This bread is my body.' Then Jesus took a cup. He thanked God for it and gave it to the followers. He said, 'Every one of you, drink this. This is my blood, which begins the new agreement that God makes with his people. This blood is poured out for many to forgive their sins. I tell you this, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine again until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom.' They sang a hymn, then they went out to the Mount of Olives." Okay. Oh, so again, like last week, you need a piece of paper and you need something to write with. So if you don't have one, press pause and go get one. Okay? That's something to do here every time. If you need to look up the verses, if you need to draw, go get a piece of paper. You press pause and you get it, and then you press play again, and then you're ready. Okay? So this is the Thursday night before Easter. So it's the Thursday night before Jesus dies, and he's having his Last Supper with his disciples. So it's called the Last Supper. And so we're going to draw a table, because we eat at tables, whether or not they did. And we're going to draw Jesus, and I'm working on getting some colored expo markers so I can use colors to differentiate things, but I don't have them yet. So even though Jesus is not wearing a crown at this point, we're going to put a crown on him to be, this is Jesus, okay? Jesus is the King of Kings. He has a crown. And so remember in our story, there were 2 things that he gave his disciples. And one was some bread, and we'll put little lines on it here so you can tell that's a loaf of bread, okay? And so the bread represents his body, and then he had a cup, okay? And the cup represents his blood. And so he was still trying to get through to his disciples that he was going to die. He said, "I'm going to die like the scriptures say, and this is my new covenant, my new promise with you, The bread represents my body, and the wine represents my blood. So remember that. They still had trouble, but you know. Okay. So it said, then they sang a hymn and they went to the Mount of Olives. So now we're going to read what happened at the Mount of Olives, which is Luke 22. And I'm using the International Children's Bible again. Luke 22, verses 39 to 44. Jesus left the city and went to the Mount of Olives. His followers went with him. Jesus went there often. He said to his followers, "Pray for strength against temptation." Then Jesus went about a stone's throw away from them. He kneeled down and prayed, "Father, if it is what you want, then let me not have this cup of suffering. But do what you want, not what I want." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him to help him. Jesus was full of pain. He prayed even more. Sweat dripped from his face as if he were bleeding. Okay, so they went to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus knelt down and is praying. And so it sounds like he's having a hard time since he's sweating so bad he's bleeding. So he has blood in his sweat or whatever. So I'm going to have him leaning on a rock because, might help. So here's Jesus praying. And again, I'm going to put the crown on his head so we know this is Jesus. And he's got his hands folded here because he's praying. And do you remember what came to strengthen him? God sent an angel to strengthen him. So here we have our angel halo, so we can tell it's an angel. And he's giving Jesus strength because Jesus knew he was going to die. And I think, like most of us, he didn't really want to die. So he asked Jesus to take that cup from him. And God sent an angel to give him the strength to go through what he needed to do next, which is what we're going to find out. So Luke 22, verses 45 to 54. When he finished praying, he went to his followers. They were asleep. Their sadness had made them very tired. Jesus said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray for strength against temptation." While Jesus was speaking, a crowd came up. One of the 12 apostles was leading them. He was Judas. He came close to Jesus so that he could kiss him. But Jesus said to him, "Judas, are you using this kiss to give the Son of Man to his enemies?" The followers of Jesus were standing there too. They saw what was happening. They said to Jesus, "Lord, should we use our swords?" And one of them did use his sword. He cut off the right ear of the servant of the high priest. Jesus said, "Stop!" Then he touched the servant's ear and healed him. Those who came to arrest Jesus were the leading priests, the soldiers who guarded the temple, and the Jewish elders. Jesus said to them, "Why did you come out here with swords and sticks? Do you think I am a criminal? I was with you every day in the temple. Why didn't you try to arrest me there? But this is your time, the time when darkness rules." They arrested Jesus and took him away. So he's been arrested. So we're going to draw. There's our crown because he's Jesus. And he's been arrested. So we're going to put him in chains. Okay? And he has several trials. We're going to just skip to the main final trial, which is in Matthew 27. And it kind of intersperses the story and jumps between what's happening with Jesus and what's happening with someone else. So we're going to Matthew 27, and we're going to do verses 1 and 2, 11 to 14, and 24 to 26. Okay, here we go. Early the next morning, so this happened at night, and this is now the next morning. Early the next morning, all the leading priests and elders of the people decided to kill Jesus. They tied him, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate, the governor. Jesus stood before Pilate, the governor. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Yes, I am." When the leading priests and the elders accused Jesus, he said nothing. So Pilate said to Jesus, "Don't you hear these people accusing you of all these things?" But Jesus said nothing in answer to Pilate. Pilate was very surprised at this. Pilate saw that he could do nothing about all this, and a riot was starting. So he took some water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. Then he said, "I am not guilty of this man's death. You are the ones who are causing it." All the people answered, "We will be responsible. We accept for ourselves and for our children any punishment for this death." Then Pilate freed Barabbas, and Pilate told some of the soldiers to beat Jesus with whips. Then he gave Jesus to the soldiers to be killed on a cross. So, we're going to draw here. We have Jesus, and he's still chained up. And here's his crown. Okay? And then we have Pilate sitting on his judgment seat. And Pilate is a representative of the Romans, so we're going to kind of give him, I don't know, kind of like a laurel-y thingy, because that's what they wore. And he's questioning Jesus here. Okay? So that's what led up to the crucifixion. And so we'll review. So Thursday night, Jesus is meeting with his disciples. He's having his last meal with them. And he brings out the bread and the wine, and he tells them to do this to remember him. And that the bread represents his body, and the wine represents his blood, both of which are given for us on the cross. And then they go out. They go out to the garden where Jesus prays. He prays that if there's any way for him to not go through with this, that he doesn't have to, but not his will, but God's will be done. And God sends an angel to come and help strengthen him for what he has to go through next. And then the crowd comes and they arrest Jesus. They do their deed. And he goes through some other trials first, but finally he's brought before Pilate, and Pilate questions him. He doesn't see anything wrong with him, but he doesn't want to get in trouble for a riot starting. And so Jesus is sent to be crucified. And next week, we'll study the next part. So Jesus went through all this for you and for me. He went through all this as a sacrifice so that we can be in heaven with him, right? And this is just the beginning. So my challenge to you guys, as a way that you can say thank you for the sacrifice Jesus has done for you, is find some way to reach out and help the healthcare workers in your town or healthcare workers in your family that you know. If you are good with sewing, you can make them some masks. You can draw them cards and mail them to them. Any sort of something to let them know we're thinking of you guys while you're on the front lines battling this virus will be much appreciated. So that's my challenge this week. Is we're gonna work on trying to make some masks. I also have maybe some magnets that we'll paint and send to them, just to let the healthcare workers in our area know that we support them. So that's what I want you to do. Find some way to support the healthcare workers where you're at. All right, let's close with prayer. Dear God, thank you for this Sabbath, and thank you for the blessing of Jesus coming and living and dying for us, and eventually being resurrected, as we'll learn as we get closer to Easter. And thank you for going with each of us, and show us how we can live for you this week. Amen.